Hi, welcome to the director's cut of the hiking videos that I made this summer. I will be talking through some of the behind the scenes and other things that I didn't get to include in the video. Let's go. So this is day 48, and doesn't that just look like a Windows screensaver? Classic Windows screensaver? Today was day 48, hiking the Continental Divide Trail and Great Divide Trail combined. I probably took a 0.5. I didn't get back on trail until well after noon. It's really warm in the next week, so I don't expect any. So what I'm looking at here is the avalanche forecast in Colorado, and you could see that it said that avalanches are possible, maybe small to moderate size, and typically on the north aspect in the previous screen. And then this one says below tree line, near tree line, low risk of low risk of avalanches, and then above tree line, you get a moderate risk. And what people are saying, the avalanche forecasters are saying, get out of the mountains early. So don't stay on the mountain after like noon or so. It might start to get an issue of a wet slab problem where you might have snow that's very wet and heavy. And as the sun continues to melt it, that it just starts to slide because of you triggering it with your weight. And unfortunately for me, I cannot get back to the trailhead by 10 or 11 a.m. I have to be out there hiking all of the daylight hours. So, I was worried. I was looking at all of the topography, trying to figure out, am I going to be on these kind of riskier aspects? Can I avoid them? Just trying to get to know what are the things that I need to be watching out for here. To freeze well, and I'm concerned about wet, loose avalanche risk as it continues to. The last screen there talked about what some of the problems were going to be. So it talks about, start and end your day early. It was not freezing overnight at this point, so that was definitely an issue. And let's see. The issue with the wet slab avalanche, even if it's small, is that it may not bury you, but it could take you down for a long ride. And if you cannot stop yourself because of the avalanche, then you might get, you might hit trees or rocks or whatever else and then get hurt from that. So that was what I was worried about. As it continues to melt. I've already been triggering small sloughs. There are still some exposed traverses at elevation in this section, and I can't always follow the early on. This is the shuttle that goes around the area: Frisco, Breckenridge, Dillon, and Silverthorne. I had gotten off trail in Silverthorne since I was taking the Silverthorne alternate, so I took a bus back to Silverthorne. And I think that on this day, I actually ran into Chill and Machete, who I had met first in Chama, New Mexico. And they had actually done I think they did a flip. They did the green line, so not the main CDT. They did the green line through the San Juans, and then they flipped from Leadville up to Silverthorne. And then they were now hitching a ride to Wyoming in order to get out of the snow and come back for Colorado later on. And actually, I ran into them again at East Glacier. So I amazingly ran into these people 3 times on trail, despite them flipping around and me continuing north. Rule if I'm trying to get a full day of hiking in. The hillsides just beyond town are deep in wildflower season, but above 11,400 feet or so, it's patchy, and then full-on snow. So even beautiful. Like the aspens in Colorado are gorgeous. On this alternate at lower elevation. At the pass, I followed a creek down the valley along a gentler slope to avoid. So, the snow patches started around this time, and I remember I was carrying my snowshoes on my backpack and carrying obviously a big backpack and full backpack, and there were other day hikers out there who were looking at me funny because they were like, "What are you using snowshoes for? There's no snow around here." And I was like, "Oh no, but I'm going higher and I'm going further in, and I know there's going to be snow for sure," and there was. Deep terrain where the trail was. This worked when the creek was small and the trees were open, but as I descended, the creek got wider and the trees more dense. Eventually, the creek was in a little canyon and it was hard to avoid it, and it was getting dark. I really dislike being in terrain I can't camp in at dusk, but once you start to panic, you're less careful and things start to go wrong and compound. So I kept telling myself, this is fine. There is no panic. You're not going to die. You just might get wet. Being wet is uncomfortable, but it is survivable. I traversed out of the... what I was trying to show there is... essentially what happened is the way that the trail goes in that area, it goes around and down these switchbacks, down this very steep section. And I didn't want to be on the switchbacks because it was so steep. And I was sure the switchbacks were going to be covered in snow. So then you're like going down a very steep, snowy slope possibly a lot of trees. So it would probably be really slow going. So I instead took down I followed another valley system down to the, I guess another, what would you call it, drainage system down to the valley. And that drainage obviously had a creek in the drainage, which started out as a little stream and then it becomes bigger and bigger and bigger. So it sort of narrowed over time. And I started out being like, it was very open, it was very easy walking, and then it got harder and harder and harder. There actually was a set of tracks here that were not slides, I don't think, or maybe in addition to slides. I'm not really sure. But I was sort of loosely following them. But the issue for me was that I was kind of getting into this terrain trap of a very narrow canyon as I cut further and further down the mountain. And the creek got bigger and bigger, and the walls were getting steeper and steeper. And so eventually I had to, climb these steep banks to get out of the sort of gully. But I didn't love that because it was already getting late. I don't like being in that kind of terrain at the end of the day. You just worry that you're not going to be able to get out of it before the light goes away, and then it's harder with less visibility. I think I did fall into the creek once, but luckily I didn't get swept down or anything. It wasn't that deep at that point. I traversed out of the canyon trap and was able to find level ground where I could camp. See you tomorrow. I think it's just an example of how much all of this is about your mentality, like how well you can stay resilient enough in that kind of terrain to stay calm and not panic and handle things realistically. I think it's really important. So that's day 48.